Hey, everybody. Welcome in once again. We've got another great episode of the StokKon+Braverman podcast series, Therapy or Divorce. Today, we're going to talk about life after divorce for parents. We're going to have the same discussion for children on another episode. Today, we've got Hanit Simon. She is the family law attorney for StokKon+Braverman in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And Donnie Frank is a marriage therapist in New York. Welcome to you both. And I'm going to throw this one to Donnie first. Here's what we're going to talk about. What is really what you see life after divorce for the parents when they come in to talk to you, whether individual or together, and what it's like for them to navigate being parents post-divorce?
Okay. It's great topic. I wish I would see more parents together after a divorce to deal with the parenting. Unfortunately, at least this way it works in my practice, I don't often get the benefit of that. It would be really amazing, and any parents that are in this situation that are listening to this podcast, we like to live by the rule that says that you have to love your kids more than you dislike your spouse or your ex, or you go strong more than you hate your ex. And in most cases, your kids need parents to be working together. Although you're not married to each other any longer, but you will forever be your kids' parents, and that relationship should always remain healthy as co-parents. But like I said, unfortunately, I don't know. It doesn't seem to work that way. You kind of have to piece it together, meet the father, meet the mother, and speak to the lawyer through it gets complicated.
I agree with you, Donnie. I also would prefer if more parents went to therapists after divorce. Here in the state of Florida, we do have a requirement that the parents take a parenting course to assist them with some of the post-divorce, issues that may come up from time to time. So they are required to do that by law prior to closing out the divorce case. Now, we have a saying, though, that the case never ends until the last child reaches 18 and emancipates, because more often than not, the parents are coming back for one reason or another after divorce. Sadly, you have a lot of issues that probably stem from an emotional place. In addition to, of course, you have logistical challenges of, raising kids in two separate households, and parents tend to, change quite a bit after divorce. They go through a lot themselves from an emotional standpoint. I would imagine, I'm sure, Donnie, you can speak to that, but they are going through a lot of life changes when they go through the divorce process, and then they have to figure out again how to raise their children in totally different environments. You have issues that come up quite often in, and I see in my practice, sadly, with parental alienation is a big issue, where parents unfortunately sometimes feel the need to fight over, the children, and try to be, in a position to be the better parent, so to speak. And the children, sadly, they have two parents who love them, and they shouldn't have to undergo that kind of environment. And there's a lot of issues, competitions, I guess, between the parents that I tend to see that probably, if I have to guess, drives a lot of the later post, judgment cases. I don't know if you tend to see those types of issues, and how you might, work through them.
Well, it gets, look, it's again, these are not all cases, but the things we look out for. And in the parent education, post the divorce, would be, not to get into the, how can I be a better parent than the other one? How can I outdo the other one? How can I outspend the other one? How can I make a better vacation and make it more attractive to be with me? Look, these are impulses, and they're the kinds of things that people naturally would want. Make sure my child loves me and care and thinks that I'm a great parent, and it's at the expense. That was competition. And we do try to manage that, but again, it gets difficult if the parents are not coming together to work together as parents. So it's almost never being done in an ideal setting. One way that I think, you mentioned alienation. There's a whole other topic out there today that I've been very involved in the last couple of years, which is overall reunification therapy, which involves putting together different parts of the family, not just, I used to do just couples, now I'm putting together all parts of the family. But in divorce, there may be situations I'm called into when, however it came about, whether it was an alienation or not, but there'd be one parent that is not having a connection maybe at all. And I'm often asked, to help build that relationship between that one parent and that child. But, what in a case like that, and you always have to be careful because you get involved in a situation where you have a divorce and multiple kids, everything else. When I'm called in to do one surgery, the parents will pull me in to everything else that goes on in their situation. And here's what I'd like to understand from a lawyer: if there are things going on that need to be, I'm going to say policed, and maybe it's not the best word. I would say to the couple, the person I'm working with, you've got to take it to your lawyer. I can't be involved in managing the big picture when I'm being hired to specifically mend one relationship out of all the stuff that's going on. And it becomes interesting how to interplay with the lawyers in a situation like that. I mean, is that something that you've been on the other end of?
Yeah. So, when it comes to children's issues, especially, we say it takes a village because it really does. That we have this in Florida best interest of the child standard that really, affords our courts the inherent authority to come in and handle other aspects, that may not be limited, like you said, to the parents themselves. It may be other influences. And as much as, the parents may be the parties to the case, the court often has to, act. And that may require the court to enter orders in the best interest of the child to preclude others, from having contact. And then it becomes that parent's responsibility not, to permit the child to have contact with whoever it is that may be, causing the problem. You also pointed to reunification therapy, and that's something that we try to do as well after, it may even occur during the original divorce action, but also, once they're starting to get their bearings after divorce and rebuild their lives as newly single parents. There may be issues that arise that require reunification therapy. So I think, that's a very common component of the post-judgment cases involving parenting issues, aside from, of course, we do have the child support matters and other things, but, just to deal with the emotional fallout, the emotional experience of going through the divorce process and having different homes. Perhaps, you have a new significant other who's now entering the life of the child through the, newly divorced parent. And that presents oftentimes a lot of, new challenges. I don't know if you've seen that in your practice, Donnie, but it's interesting because that new person comes with a whole new set of their own standards, values, principles, and what effect does that have? And should they act as, stepmom, stepdad, so to speak, and that's not necessarily a legal designation, but they tend to, people tend to use these identifiers for somebody coming into the child's life. So how do you, how do you see that? Does that come up in practice where you have to maybe establish boundaries for parents?
Well, you mentioned about blended families and a new spouse, a new stepmother, stepfather comes into the picture. I mean, that's its own subject also to coach couples about. I had years back, I had a situation where there was guy, married a woman who had a child. It's not important to get into the details of it, but this 5-year-old child had been through such hell. It's hard to describe how someone could have gone through so much in 5 years. But he was committed. His father comes in, his stepfather comes in. He's committed to being good to this boy. And he's going to finally give him stability and love and everything else he never got from a man. So first got married, comes home, sees the boy. He says, "Hi, how was your day?" And the kid ignores him. Comes back the next day, same thing. "Hi, how are you? How was your day?" Ignores him. You won't believe this, but I mean, I don't know. But the guy tells me when I first met him, he says he was advised by somebody that the next time the boy comes in and says hello to him, he should ignore him so he knows what it feels like.
Wow.
Now, I used to keep a list of like the worst advice that anyone ever gave, and that was at the top of the list. But now leave the advice and the advisor aside, but get into the mind and the feelings of this new father. He's trying so hard, and yet he's not making any inroads. Those are the kind of things that need to be managed. Reassurances, understanding that what this child went through. You know how long it's going to take in order for him to be able to build trust. You know what he's been through.
Yeah.
And it isn't so intuitive because it hurts. When you really come in there excited to be good to this boy, and all you get back is pushback. So those are the kinds of things that you navigate when you talk blended families. Good intent, well-intentioned. I'm not talking about the ones who are not so well-intentioned, but even well-intentioned, there are dynamics that are really very sensitive, very delicate.
Right. Yeah. And so we see, cases where we could have had an early intervention. I mean, it would have been possible to maybe stave off some of the issues from developing. They tend to snowball sometimes if they're not caught early on. And then by the time the family court is willing to act, it's often after the fact. I mean, we're not first responders. We're not, acting in some kind of preventative capacity, unfortunately. And so, good therapy may come in to help, before something, unfortunate would occur. And then if not, the family courts, often come in afterwards, to protect the child. But it would be helpful to have a team effort, right?
And that's really a great place for us to stop in this conversation. I know it was just intended to be life after divorce for parents, but I think we pretty much got into children as well. We could get into that at another time and go more in depth on what children see. Hanit Simon, family law attorney with StokKon+Braverman, and Donnie Frank from New York, and a family therapist himself. StokKon+Braverman bringing you this podcast series. We'll see you next time.